Pierce Brosnan wore the tuxedo of a man no mission could break. But life did not need a mission to find the one place he could still be broken. Behind the Aston Martin, the charm, and the command of 007 was an Irish boy who grew up without his father and saw his mother only rarely. Fame later gave him everything the world could admire. Yet it could not protect Cassandra, the wife who became his home, or Charlotte, the daughter he lost to the same ovarian cancer 22 years later. And now, at 73, as new roles bring him back before the cameras, Pierce Brosnan still carries a grief no spotlight has ever managed to fade. The deepest wound in his story did not begin in Hollywood, but in a childhood shaped by distance, waiting, and the fear that love might leave again. Before we begin, subscribe and leave a like for Pierce, a quiet tribute to the man beyond Bond. Pierce Brosnan's first lessons in love were lessons in distance. He was born on May 16, 1953 in Drogheda, and spent his earliest years in Navan. His father, Thomas, left when Pierce was an infant. At 4, his mother, May, went to London to train and work as a nurse. She returned whenever work allowed, sometimes only once or twice a year. Pierce first lived with his maternal grandparents. After they died, he moved between an aunt, an uncle, and finally the lodging house of Eileen Riley. The roofs changed. The people around him did not disappear. "My grandfather was the hand that I held," he later recalled. At Eileen's house, Pierce slept in a small iron bed beside a window, enclosed by a shiny green curtain with newspaper pinned up to block the light. It might sound bleak from the outside. Pierce remembered it with warmth. It was happiness. It was joy. Eileen's children became companions. The streets gave him friends. A tiny slide projector his mother brought home cast Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck across the ceiling, turning a plain room into a private cinema. Then came one Christmas when May could not return because she was working. In her place arrived a pair of worn boxing gloves. Pierce kept them for decades in his bookcase. He did not need to explain why. The gloves had outlived the distance. In August 1964, at 11, Pierce rejoined his mother and her new husband, William Carmichael. Bill brought steadiness into a life of many addresses, and during Pierce's first weeks in Britain, the family took him to see Goldfinger. Sean Connery's Bond filled the screen with control, elegance, and danger held perfectly still. Outside the cinema, London felt less welcoming. Classmates called Pierce Irish, and he decided the name would belong to him before it could be used against him. By 16, he had left school carrying a cardboard folder of drawings and began training in commercial illustration. Painting came first. Acting arrived later, almost by accident, when an experimental theater workshop introduced him to dance, mime, and performance. The room demanded presence rather than pedigree. Pierce stayed. He later trained for 3 years at the Drama Centre London, studying the discipline behind every gesture and line. "When acting found me, it was a liberation," he said. The boy who had moved through several homes had found a craft that asked him to stand still, speak clearly, and be seen. Yet liberation was only the beginning. Beyond the classroom waited rejection, small roles, uncertain pay, and a long road toward the part that would make the world remember his name. Beyond the classrooms of the Drama Centre London, Pierce Brosnan found no waiting limousine, no guaranteed contract, and no promise that talent would be enough. After completing his training in 1975, he joined the Theatre Royal in York and appeared in Wait Until Dark. The parts were modest, but the work demanded discipline. Arrive prepared, hold the room, and earn another night. Within months, Tennessee Williams selected him to play McCabe in the 1977 British production of The Red Devil Battery Sign. After seeing Brosnan perform, Williams sent a telegram containing only a few words. "Thank God for you, my dear boy." The message brought encouragement, not instant fame. The production brought him before London critics and helped move him from regional theater toward larger stages and screen auditions. Film opened only narrow doors at first. In 1980, Brosnan appeared briefly in The Mirror Cracked, surrounded by established names including Elizabeth Taylor and Angela Lansbury. The same year, he entered the hard-edged world of The Long Good Friday with Bob Hoskins and Helen Mirren. The appearances were short, yet they placed him inside major productions and moved him closer to steadier work. Television gave him more room. The Mannions of America introduced him to a wider audience, while Nancy Astor earned him his first Golden Globe nomination. His work was now reaching viewers far beyond the theater. The decisive break came from American television. In 1982, Brosnan began playing the mysterious con man, who assumes the name Remington Steele in NBC's romantic detective series. Stephanie Zimbalist's Laura Holt drove the investigations. Brosnan brought wit, elegance, danger, and an easy chemistry that viewers remembered. Remington Steele premiered on October 1, 1982, and its 5-season run gave him the sustained visibility that years of brief appearances had not. It also created an association he could not escape. The tailored suits, raised eyebrow, and controlled charm looked uncannily close to James Bond. Audiences began imagining him as 007 before the role was ever his. That possibility became real in 1986. Remington Steele had been canceled, and Brosnan was offered the chance to succeed Roger Moore as Bond. For 60 days, however, NBC retained the right to revive the series. He had been assured that everything would be fine. On the final day of that contractual window, he was walking toward the beach with champagne for Cassandra when the telephone rang. His agent told him the deal had collapsed. NBC wanted more episodes. Bond producer Albert Cubby Broccoli would not share his new 007 with the television series. Timothy Dalton received the role instead. Brosnan later described the moment simply, "That was a blow." Then, he returned to work. The years that followed filled his resume with roles that demanded more than polished charm. In The Fourth Protocol, released in 1987, he played opposite Michael Caine in a colder, more dangerous register. In 1993, Mrs. Doubtfire placed him inside one of America's most beloved family comedies, opposite Robin Williams and Sally Field. These projects showed range rather than promise. He could carry menace, romance, humor, and restraint. Bond remained nearby in the public imagination, yet his career continued without it. By 1994, 8 years had passed since that call on the way to the beach. His life had also endured losses far greater than a missed role. When Timothy Dalton stepped away, Brosnan was offered Bond again. On June 8th, he was introduced to the world as the 5th James Bond. 2 days later, while filming Robinson Crusoe in a remote part of Papua New Guinea, children recognized him from the international announcement and shouted, "James Bond! James Bond!" No Bond film with him had yet reached theaters, yet the announcement had reached even that remote location. GoldenEye arrived in 1995 after a 6-year absence for the series. The Cold War had ended, audiences had changed, and the future of 007 was uncertain. Brosnan entered a production carrying enormous expectations. He combined the polish audiences remembered from Remington Steele with a harder edge suited to a new era. Judi Dench's newly appointed M challenged Bond's old assumptions, while the story placed him in a world no longer governed by the conflicts that had created him. The film opened strongly, became an international success, and restored the franchise after years of silence. It earned more than $350 million worldwide, the strongest commercial result for a Bond film at that time. For Brosnan, the moment carried the weight of everything behind it: stage work, brief screen appearances, television fame, a contract that once closed the door, and 8 years of waiting. Pierce Brosnan had finally reached the role that slipped away, and this time, audiences accepted him at once as Bond from his first mission. James Bond was still years away when Pierce Brosnan met Cassandra Harris in London in the mid-1970s. By then, he already knew what it meant to grow up between changing homes. With Cassandra came something steadier: a woman, 2 children, and a family that welcomed him fully. He did not remain a guest in Charlotte and Christopher's lives. After the death of their biological father, Pierce adopted them, and they took his name. He and Cassandra married in 1980, and their son Sean was born in September 1983. The actor was still fighting for larger roles, but at home he was already living the part that mattered most to him: husband and father. Cassandra understood the uncertainty of an actor's life. She encouraged his work, helped him weigh important decisions, and stood beside him as Remington Steele carried his face into American homes. She had also appeared in For Your Eyes Only in 1981, years before Bond returned to Pierce as a real possibility at last. Pierce later said she shaped the man, actor, and father he became. Their home held 3 children, visiting friends, work discussions, and the ordinary disorder of family life. During those years, they moved forward together, children growing, careers changing, and plans being made without any sense of how soon illness would interrupt them. In 1987, while the family was in India for the Deceivers, Cassandra became unusually tired and her abdomen began to swell. Back in London, doctors operated and found ovarian cancer. The diagnosis changed the rhythm of their life at once. Cassandra underwent 8 operations and about 18 months of chemotherapy. She questioned treatments, made her own decisions, and continued directing family life whenever her strength returned. Pierce described himself as the quiet one beside her, present through each new test and each uncertain result. Sean was still very young. After chemotherapy left his mother exhausted, he sometimes pretended to be her doctor. Sean would sometimes play doctor, Pierce recalled. He stayed near her until she could rise again, speak with the children, discuss Pierce's work, or make another plan for the house. A child's game had become part of the family's daily struggle to keep ordinary life moving. Illness did not silence the household. At their Malibu home, friends remembered children shouting and jumping into the pool while Cassandra watched nearby. 2 days after one chemotherapy treatment, weakened and losing her hair, she still walked the steep property with Pierce before they decided to buy it. The house became one of the places where she felt most at ease. During those years, Pierce also returned to painting, working with his fingers and hands while living beside the fear of losing her. As Cassandra's condition worsened, the treatments offered less hope. Pierce later admitted that he never asked whether she was afraid, a silence he regretted because her determination had seemed so strong. About a week before her final hospital stay, she comforted him while he struggled with confusion and anger. By then, the choices before them had narrowed. At the hospital, they held hands and prayed. A priest left religious readings, and Pierce tried to read aloud at the foot of her bed. The actor who had spent years learning lines could not keep the words in order. He apologized for making a mess of them. Unable to hear her reply, he leaned close to her lips. Cassandra repeated, "Always an actor." They were the last words he could clearly understand from her. On the morning of December 28, 1991, Charlotte called from London. Pierce held Cassandra while keeping Charlotte on the telephone. Christopher arrived moments later. Cassandra died at 43, one day after the couple's 11th wedding anniversary. That afternoon, Pierce returned home and placed Sean on his lap. He told him his mother had died. Tears reached the boy's eyes without falling. Sean answered that she was no longer in pain. Pierce sought counseling for himself and Sean. He allowed the children to see his tears and tried to choose work that would let him leave in the morning and return at night. He stayed in daily contact with Charlotte and kept the household moving around Christopher and Sean. 4 months after Cassandra's death, he said she remained present in every part of the man he had become. She never saw the world embrace him as James Bond, yet the steadiness audiences later admired had already been tested beside her, in family rooms filled with children, in hospital corridors, and in the memory of one hand holding another. Charlotte Brosnan was more than the daughter Pierce loved. She was one of the warmest voices in his family. He had entered her life when she was still young and adopted her after the death of her biological father, Dermot Harris. Years later, Pierce said his most intense memory was simple. He could always make her laugh. Charlotte built a life with her longtime partner, Alex Smith, and their children, Isabella and Lucas. At home, she was the mother at the center of ordinary days. The familiar voice, the shared joke, the person her children expected to find there. Then ovarian cancer entered the family for a second time. Charlotte had watched the disease take her mother, Cassandra, in 1991. Nearly 2 decades later, she received the same diagnosis. She underwent treatment for 3 years while continuing to live as a partner, mother, daughter, and sister. Pierce later described the way she faced those years with grace and humanity, courage, and dignity. Those were the qualities he chose to name when the family announced her death. By June 2013, time had become painfully limited. Charlotte married Alex, the man with whom she had raised Isabella and Lucas, only weeks before she died. The day centered on marriage, children, and the family gathered around her. For a few precious hours, hospital schedules and treatment no longer defined the room. Charlotte stood beside the man who had shared her life while the people closest to them witnessed the promise. On June 28, 2013, Charlotte died in London at 41. Alex was with her. Isabella, 14, and Lucas, 8, were there, along with her brothers Christopher and Sean. Pierce's public statement was brief. He called her his darling daughter and asked people to pray for her children. He also prayed that a cure would come soon, turning the family's private loss toward the disease that had now taken mother and daughter. After 3 years of appointments, treatment, and guarded hope, 2 young lives now had to continue without their mother. The full weight of that loss emerged the following year. At the 2014 Stand Up to Cancer broadcast, Pierce spoke about the 2 women whose lives had been taken by ovarian cancer. He remembered holding Cassandra's hand years earlier. Then he spoke of holding the hand of his funny, wonderful daughter, Charlotte, before she died. The same father had now faced the same disease beside 2 generations of his family. He paused. The image needed no explanation. Charlotte's death reached every branch of the family. Alex lost his wife. Isabella and Lucas lost the person who had shaped their earliest years. Christopher and Sean lost their sister, and a family that had already learned to live around Cassandra's absence faced the same illness again. Pierce continued to remember Charlotte through the quality cancer had never taken from her. Years later, he wrote simply, "Here's looking at you, kid," while a family friend recalled the memory that remained strongest for him, the joy of making Charlotte laugh. That laughter belongs beside the sorrow. Charlotte remains the daughter Pierce adopted and loved, the sister who grew beside Christopher and Sean, the wife Alex chose, and the mother whose presence continues through Isabella and Lucas. When Pierce later stood before cameras to support cancer research, he carried both women with him. Cassandra's hand had once rested in his. Years later, Charlotte's did too. For a father, the repetition required no metaphor. Pierce Brosnan met Keely Smith in Cabo San Lucas in 1994, 3 years after Cassandra's death, and before GoldenEye made him James Bond. Keely was working as a journalist when they met at a party in Mexico. Their relationship began during a period when Pierce's professional life was opening again while his family still carried an older loss. He did not need another person to erase that history, and Keely never had to compete with it. What they built belonged to the life that continued afterward. Keely brought her own work, convictions, and public voice into the relationship. She had reported on environmental issues, and would later work as a filmmaker and advocate. Pierce joined her at benefits and campaigns long before their wedding, and their shared concern for oceans, wildlife, and the places their children would inherit became part of their partnership. In later years, they worked with environmental organizations to oppose a proposed salt factory at Laguna San Ignacio in Mexico and a liquefied natural gas facility off the California coast. Their marriage grew through family life and public work rather than through the image of Hollywood romance alone. Their first son, Dylan, was born in 1997. Paris followed in 2001. On August 4th of that year, Pierce and Keely married at Ballintubber Abbey in County Mayo, Ireland, with their family gathered around them. The ceremony joined a household that already held several histories: Cassandra's memory, Pierce's older children, and the two young sons he and Keely were raising together. There was no need to present one family as a replacement for another. The past remained part of the home, while new birthdays, school years, holidays, and ordinary mornings accumulated beside it. Pierce and Keely have described the foundation of their marriage in simpler terms than rescue or destiny. He has spoken about solving problems year after year, liking one another, and getting along. Keely answered with two words: being best friends. That description carries more weight than the familiar claim that one person saved the other. Their bond was built through decisions repeated over time: raising children, maintaining a blended family, supporting creative work, and continuing shared causes even when cameras were absent. Their life was measured less by rescue than by the years they kept choosing it. When Charlotte died in 2013, the family entered another period of mourning. Keely did not replace the mother Pierce had lost or the daughter he was grieving. She remained his wife and the mother of Dylan in Paris, while the wider family faced the same ovarian cancer that had taken Cassandra. The distinction matters. Love did not remove Pierce's grief, and grief did not prevent the family from continuing to live together. Dylan and Paris grew up between Malibu and Hawaii, close to the ocean their parents had worked to protect. Both developed creative lives of their own, while Pierce continued acting and painting, and Keely pursued journalism, filmmaking, and environmental advocacy. Their household was never separate from the losses that came before it, yet it was not defined by them alone. It became the stable home Pierce had rarely known as a child. Not perfect, not untouched by sorrow, but sustained through presence, friendship, and years of returning to one another. Keely's place in Pierce Brosnan's story does not need the language of salvation. She became his partner in the years after bereavement, the woman with whom he raised two sons, defended coastlines, marked anniversaries, and built a life long enough to contain both remembrance and change. In family photographs across 3 decades, the image that remains is not a wounded man being rescued. It is a husband, a wife, their children, and a home spacious enough to honor those who were gone, while still making room for those who were growing. Pierce Brosnan's final Bond film reached theaters in 2002, but the ending of his tenure arrived without a final scene. In 2004, while he was filming After the Sunset in the Bahamas, his agents called to say negotiations had stopped. Producers Barbara Broccoli and Michael G. Wilson then spoke with him briefly and confirmed that the series was moving in another direction. Brosnan thanked them and said goodbye. Years later, he described the surprise of that ending as leaving a void and an itch of unfinished business. The disappointment was real, yet it did not erase what the role had given him. 4 films, a decade of global recognition, and the opportunity to establish Irish Dreamtime, the production company through which he could help shape projects beyond 007. The first clear answer came through The Matador. Instead of another immaculate hero, Brosnan played Julian Noble, a weary and unstable contract killer whose loneliness, vanity, and dark humor stripped away the polished control associated with Bond. He also served as a producer, The performance earned him a 2006 Golden Globe nomination, demonstrating that audiences and critics could accept him in a role built around damage rather than elegance. Other choices widened that distance. Mamma Mia placed him beside Meryl Streep in a musical filled with sunlight, comedy, and family longing. The November Man later allowed him to return to espionage on different terms. Brosnan said the film grew from the unfinished business Bond had left behind, giving him room to create an action character without repeating 007. These were not the steps of an actor whose opportunities had vanished. They were the decisions of an artist learning how to use a famous image without remaining trapped inside it. Bond continued to follow him in interviews, premieres, and the expectations attached to every tailored suit. Brosnan did not pretend the separation had been painless, and he never needed to diminish Daniel Craig to explain his own disappointment. Over time, the role became one chapter within a broader body of work that included comedy, drama, independent film, producing, painting, and later character roles far removed from the spy who had defined him. The abrupt phone call denied him the ceremonial farewell many actors receive. His career supplied another ending. He kept working, took risks that Bond would never have allowed, and proved that losing the tuxedo had not taken away the performer wearing it. Christopher Brosnan entered Pierce's life as a child, long before distance became part of their story. Born to Cassandra Harris and Dermot Harris in 1972, he was later adopted by Pierce, along with his sister Charlotte. He took the Brosnan name and grew up close to film. As a young man, Christopher studied screenwriting at UCLA and directing at the New York Film Academy. He also worked behind the camera on several of Pierce's productions, including Tomorrow Never Dies, The World Is Not Enough, and The Thomas Crown Affair. Their bond was not built only through family photographs. For a time, father and son also shared sets and the practical work of making movies. Christopher was 19 when Cassandra died in 1991. Pierce later said he could see the pain in his son's eyes and the absence his mother had left in his heart. In the years that followed, Christopher faced problems with substance dependency and setbacks. Pierce and the family tried to support him, but help could not succeed without Christopher's participation. By 2005, Pierce had reached a boundary he believed the family needed. He spoke of Christopher as very lost and said he could only hold on to faith that his son would recover. Creating distance was not the end of love. It acknowledged that a parent can offer care and another opportunity, yet cannot make an adult choose recovery. The years apart were real, but Christopher was never erased from Pierce's language of family. In a Father's Day message in 2022, Pierce named him alongside Paris, Dylan, and Sean, writing, "My love forever to you, dear sons." Christopher continued to live privately. Then, in November 2025, Pierce, Christopher, and Dylan were photographed leaving a family dinner in Notting Hill. One evening cannot confirm that every injury between them has healed, and neither man has publicly described the state of their relationship. Still, the image mattered. Father and son were seen sharing the same family space. Christopher's story should not be reduced to dependency or estrangement. He was a son who lost his mother young, a student of filmmaking, and a crew member who once worked beside the father who adopted him. Pierce's decision to set limits did not cancel that history, just as one dinner cannot rewrite two difficult decades. It offers something quieter and more honest, a sign that the door may never have been locked completely, and that even after years of distance, a family can still find its way back to the same table. Pierce Brosnan could not undo the losses that shaped his family, yet he refused to leave their meaning inside hospital rooms and private memories. Since 2001, he has served as an ambassador for UNICEF Ireland, lending his public voice to the needs of children. After ovarian cancer took Cassandra and Charlotte, he appeared at Stand Up to Cancer in 2014 and announced a research team devoted to developing better treatments for the disease. With Keely, he also spent years supporting environmental campaigns, from protecting the gray whale habitat at Laguna San Ignacio to opposing an industrial energy project off the California coast. The attention created by James Bond had become a way to direct attention toward lives and places that could not command the same spotlight. At 73, Pierce has not stepped away from creativity. He continues acting with new work including Giant and another season of Mobland, while painting remains part of the life he built beyond the screen. Around him are Keely, their children, grandchildren, new roles, and memories that have never been removed from the family story. Cassandra and Charlotte are still named. Christopher is still named. The years have added people and possibilities without demanding that those who were lost be forgotten. His life now holds grief, work, family, and creation in the same frame. As a boy, Pierce remembered his grandfather as the hand that I held. Decades later, he held Cassandra's hand, and then Charlotte's, through the hardest farewells of his life. That single image reaches further than the tuxedo, a child searching for steadiness, a husband staying beside his wife, a father refusing to turn away, and an older artist still standing before a canvas and a camera. James Bond made Pierce Brosnan famous. The hands he held reveal the man his family knew. If his films or his story have remained with you, leave a few words below for Pierce, and share the memory that first made him unforgettable to you.